Our next article is about an inmate in West Virginia. The article is called West Virginia Can't Require Incarcerated Atheist to Participate in Religious Programming. This was by AP News by Leah Willingham, published on July 20th of this year. So, what's going on here is there has been a hullabaloo in a prison where Andrew Miller, an inmate for breaking and entering, was serving a 1 to 10 year sentence. And now, drugs were not part of his issue with the breaking and entering. As a matter of fact, he'd been seeing a secular psychiatrist therapist for quite a while, and he'd been sober for 4 years. So this was before the breaking and entering, though, and that was on his record. So when he went to jail, they said, you're going to have to do our rehab program. Problem is, the rehab program is one of those 12-step deals. And those things are remarkably religious. And that is what this judge found. And because he refused to participate in a situation where they're telling him that he has to hear about how he's sinful for rejecting God and be encouraged to give his life to God and be discouraged from taking personal agency, his sentence was going to be a lot longer than if he had. So this effectively has become go to church or stay in jail longer. And that's what this judge has decided. And finally, we have some good news here. This is the right call. I think it is. What do you guys think? What's up, Chris?
This is awesome. This is like a really good ruling. It's kind of crazy to me that the taxpayers have been subsidizing this sort of a religious program, and it's crazy also that I mean, incarceration is ostensibly for the purpose of rehabilitation, and it's hard to be rehabilitated if part of your requirements to be rehabilitated or to at least shorten your sentence via the rules actually violate your freedom of religion or freedom from religion. So this is a really good ruling. I hope this helps across the board and in more states than just this one, and that it leads to an overall change in the way the prison system works and the way the parole system works. What do you think, Scott?
I agree. I think this is a great. This is definitely a step in the right direction. TM. but I think it's a good example of what I think is one of the themes on the nonprofits, and that is religion garners unwarranted trust from the public, and it's just based on the fact that it's religious alone that it's seen as a good thing, or you hear the phrase "good Christian," right? Well, those words don't always necessarily have to go together. We know that Christians can be just as nasty as anyone else. But it's just it's unwarranted trust. We see the same thing happen in these stories. Actually, sadly, very sadly, are much more common in the news. About the child abuse, the child sexual abuse in church, and particularly in the Catholic Church. But families trust these clergy members with their children because they're religious figures, and they're taught from an early age that the religion is good, Christianity is good, or whatever the religion happens to be. These religious leaders are trustworthy, and to put our money where our mouth is, and it's almost like maybe a virtue signaling as well. Look at us, we trust with our children, our most valuable possession, or what should be our most valuable possession. Go off and teach them and do them well, and we've seen what happens there. And so this is the same kind of thing. We know that these 12-step programs, there's questionable success rates at best. I mean, there's numbers all over the place, and I think it's really difficult to tie them down because many of these programs are anonymous. They're not allowed to gather data, and I wonder if that is intended, or I wonder if that is the cynic in me is saying, well, they just don't want to have to be accountable and responsible. Although the skeptic in me says, well, maybe not. Maybe there's good intent behind that anonymity and it's just a side effect here. But but we see that this kind of this effectiveness of these programs is, like I said, variable at best, and so, but it's trusted because, oh, it says God right there. Okay, so that means we need to go along with that. Malley, I know that you had something to say on that topic of success rates.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it's very hard to pin it down, and I tried to look all over the place for results, and I saw as high as 60%, 60%, and so this guy Lance Dodds, you can listen to his interview on NPR or get his book about this stuff, but he really looked into the numbers and did the best he could with the information he had. He used a very good approach, and I forget exactly what he did, but he talks about it in the interview. Check it out. And he estimates somewhere between 5 and 10%. Wow.
That's not 60.
That is definitely not 60. And I think he talks specifically about that 60% figure. Again, I need to listen to it again to be sure. But it's a 12-minute interview worth listening to. When it does work, though, and this is the key part, it seems to boil down to being around people with a similar mindedness to you, being in a community of people who are trying to better themselves in the same way that you are, shoulders to lean on, encouragement, and you can get that without the God thing for good and darn sure. But that's what's effective when it is effective. So what are they touting these kind of programs for? What is it? It's not for the effectiveness. It's just because it's religious, I guess. And the state is mandating this. Well, I guess maybe not quite mandating so much as not giving you, because, parole isn't required. You're not guaranteed it.
Right, right. Yeah, it's mandating, not mandating, but gun to your head. You have a choice.
Right. It's a difference between the stick and threatening you by saying no carrot for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's effectively the same thing. It's jail or church. Pick your poison. That's what it boils down to in the end.
Yeah, I wonder if just being opposed to a program like this, a Christian program like this, is just dangerous to somebody trying to get parole out of some places in this country anyway. But Malley, before we started the show, you mentioned the Bible Belt. If somebody's down in the Bible Belt and they're in prison and they are a known atheist, is that going to hurt them on their chances for parole? And I'm afraid it would. It really would. I really am. One of the things that really stood out to me really about this program was, and I'm going to read this, I'm going to risk myself sounding like a middle schooler doing a book report, but this came from a U.S. Justice Department memo from 1994. As part of their rehabilitation, many inmates are ordered to attend Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. This practice is ineffective and may be a violation of prisoners' civil rights. This is from the Justice Department, 1994. Prisons should offer a variety of treatment options for alcoholic inmates. So it surprises me somewhat that West Virginia took this long to come on board with this Justice Department memo. This is like 30 years later. What were they thinking? And I wonder if the state legislature has a bill right now to make teaching intelligent design in public schools legal now, because this seems so backwards to me in this state, and I'm really worried about things like this. Chris, you have something you'd like to add?
Yeah, it really doesn't surprise me, unfortunately, that it did take this long, especially in a state in this area. What bothers me is that I'm very skeptical that, while this is a good story, I'm very skeptical that it's actually going to have a lasting impact. Because, what are the chances that people on that parole board that were making that decision did or didn't know about the religiosity of this specific program and the objections? I believe that he would have had the opportunity to, voice his objections to that specific program. So they made this decision with the full knowledge of the the issue. So I'm just sort of wondering if these sort of biases are just going to take another form at the end of the day.
Well, I think you're onto something there, because these parole boards are people. They're human beings. You know, they're not robots interpreting the law or executing the law or whatever. Not yet, I suppose. But these are human beings. They're from that area, and I think if what I'm hoping that something like this would do would be to clarify the decision-making process for these boards, so that way they can, they have guidance on how to make their decisions and whether parole is warranted or not, but also B, that there's accountability for these people. They're making very important decisions about these people's lives. This was a decision on whether or not somebody was going to stay in prison or was going to be set free, you know, having satisfied the requirement, you know, they're paid their debt to society, as it were. And so these are big things for these people, and it's almost like a flippancy. It's almost like it's more important to stress the religiosity, or it's more important to make that point than to, it's gonna, you know, this person's gonna stay in jail because of my decision. Oh, well, you know, that's the way it goes. You know, we need to take the decision making out of the dark, right? We need to shine light on it. We need to have clarity of purpose. We have to have clarity of execution. We have to have clarity, accountability, who's done what. And so that way, if something does happen, then, you know, we can go back and look at it. And so I think, so hopefully my hope would be that it would be something that we could get out of this. If this brings attention to this type of thing, like you were saying, 1990, what was it? 1994 that
94.
That this had been decided already. And so we're 30 years later. Okay. Well, 30 years is better than nothing, but you know, if it's taking this long, there are other places. I tried to find out how religious West Virginia is. I'm not really familiar with that area. What I gathered was they were slightly more religious than the nation as a whole. If anybody knows better than that, then let me know. But I just lost my train of thought there. So I don't know. Kelly, take over. Bail me out here.
I'm going to send it back to Chris, because I know Chris has something he wanted to add to it. So
no, I'm kind of wondering how they're really going to be able to fix this, because there's really only two options now that this has been ruled unconstitutional, and that is either to give another option, to give some sort of a program that is a-religious. So they have those two options, which is just going to highlight who chooses which one and give them another area to be biased about, or it's going to lead them to have to remove the religiosity from the program entirely. And like Scott was saying, to bring the sort of the decision making out of the darkness and into the light, and removing the ability to have that sort of a bias.
That's that's the point that I forgot, that I lost track of. That was it. Thank you, Chris, for reading my mind and for putting that period right at the end of that sentence for me. I appreciate that.
We need to have Chris around more, I guess.
Yeah, no kidding. Can you come and hang out with me in the classroom sometimes?
And, you know, to follow up on that, these programs are usually voluntary. They're run by volunteers. They're not funded by the state. And if we are going to offer another program, a secular program, we need to get the volunteers for it. I'm always talking about volunteering for a good cause. This is a good cause. I'm not saying it, telling everyone they should go out and do it. But if you are going to do something, this might be something that you want to think about to change the world into a better place. So that's what I'd like to see, is to see more volunteers come out to run these programs. And I don't think we're going to be able to change this until we have that ability to provide these other programs to people. Without being able to provide the program, the people like our defendant here are going to be stuck. They're just going to be stuck. So I don't know where to go without that. So Malley, what do you got for us?
Well, you know, I don't know that it would be that difficult to take the religiosity out of it. The framework's there. The camaraderie that solves the problems when the problems get solved is there. You know, that you have the hi, I'm, Malley and I'm an alcoholic. Well, no, I'm not really. It's there. So there's not a whole lot that needs to be subtracted. The major points are things like, you'll die an alcoholic, hopeless death without God. Maybe take that out. And, you are irresponsible and lack agency. Maybe take that out. And, there's not a whole lot more to be done, I don't think. You could have 2 tracks in this program. One where, you are responsible for yourself and you're going to learn the coping skills, and another one for the people who feel too helpless to do anything without a daddy involved. It's just a thought. I mean, I don't know that
it's not a bad thought.
The funding would remain if that was the case. The Christians would probably withdraw the funding for it. But.
My dad ran an Alano club. That's the club the AA sets up, an Alano club. He ran his local Alano club for like 50 years, and he was not a believer. And when he passed away, and they had a memorial service for him there, and I went there, and it went on for 6 hours of people coming up and talking about how he had changed their lives and got them out of alcoholism. And he did it being an atheist. I mean, he did it with the Alcoholics Anonymous, with the 12-step program, but he did it as an atheist. So I know it's possible to do it. And I know that, like, I have heard that, again, like it was mentioned before, 5 to 10% success rate. My dad seemed to have a lot better success rate than that. It seemed like, anyway, at least that 6 hours of people coming up there. I can't say how many people dropped out of the program, but maybe that they need to get rid of God. Maybe that might be a key to making more people successful in the program.
Well, there are other options too, besides, talk therapy or group therapy, that kind of thing. There's medication out there. There's, what is it, naltrexone? Is that the anti-addiction drug? I mean, they've had great success with naltrexone, and there was a good, Malley mentioned Lance Dode, and that reminded me of this article that I saw in the Atlantic many years ago, and they did a big review of all the different types of programs, and they found that the AA was the worst, and that the most effective treatment was just take a pill. And it affected the the pleasure centers in the brain that are triggered by this addictive behavior, and that's attacking the problem, but that doesn't have God, and so I don't know how that would go, but there are options. I mean, there are options. That's the thing, and so they're kind of I maybe making this full circle back to that unwarranted trust. If they have options that are effective and that do work, they're putting this unwarranted trust in this program just because it says that maybe they just do a word search for God in the document, and it says mentions God 48 times there and only 2 times over here. Well, this one
God can solve all of our problems. So
exactly right. Of course, God would also be the source of all of those problems too. Is the source of all, right? But that's that's I'm taking that out of context, I guess. I don't know.
I've just got one thing to add, and that is yay science. That's
exactly. definitely. Yes.
Yeah, we can figure out what works and what doesn't if we apply the right methods to what we look at.
Crazy.
What do you know?
All right. I guess we'll wrap it up there then. And if you'd like to continue this conversation, you can check out some of our ACA fan-run social media, like the Facebook groups and the Discord server. So if you'd like to hear more from the nonprofits, you can find it right here.